Okay, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and get out your binder and your notes and write down today's I can sentence. I can use order of operations. Okay, order of operations. So we are starting with our algebra material today, and we are beginning with the order of operations. You've probably seen this in 5th grade before. The order of operations, we use this cool trick called Pemdas. P-E-M-D-A-S. All right, and these all stand for cool little math words. So usually we use the trick of saying, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And it kind of helps us remember the order in which things go. So we start with the P, and you have to go through an order of things. So the P stands for parentheses. If there's parentheses, do those first. The E stands for exponents. So if there's an exponent, do it second. The M is for multiplying. The D is for dividing. The A is for adding. And the S is for subtracting. Now, the only thing that is different this year than probably what you've ever learned before is one little change. From now on out, the M and the D, the multiplying and dividing, they are now married. So, when you're going through a math problem, it's not always multiplying before dividing. It's whichever one you see first in the math problem because they're married, they're the same. And then adding and subtracting are also married. They're in love. So it's no longer adding always before subtracting. It's whichever one you see first in the problem once you get to those two things left. All right, so our PEMDAS with that one little change. So let's look at some example problems and what they look like. Example number 1. Let's do 30 plus 4 times 2. Start simple here. 30 times 4 plus 2. Okay, so we think of our PEMDAS, and if you want, you can always write it above the problem and kind of check it off like a checklist. So, do we have any parentheses? No. Do we have any exponents? No. Is there any multiplying or dividing? Well, there is. There's multiplying. So underneath the multiplication symbol, I put a little caret or arrow. And I do just that part, 4 times 2, which is 8. Now here's the key. Drop down everything else you haven't used, the plus sign and the 30. This is called drop down work. Now, is there any more multiplying or dividing? No. So now we're to the adding and subtracting. And that's what we have left is actually adding. Put your caret or arrow underneath that. Do 30 plus 8, which is 38. And that is our answer because there's nothing else to drop down with it. All right. Now, if you see our drop down work, it kind of forms like this V. All right. We keep dropping everything down, doing one thing at a time until we end with just our answer. This is sometimes called simplifying, because we're not really getting an equal sign answer. We're simplifying this math problem down to just the answer. All right, let's look at another one. Example number 2. And before we get into example number 2, I want to review exponents. So let's look at the exponent, 3 to the second power. And let's also look at the exponent, 5 to the fourth power. And when you have an exponent, what we had to do is take the big number and write it as many times as the little number says. We call that little number bossy. It tells you what to do. So we take the 3 and write it 2 times. 3, 3. And what we do to those is multiply them. So 3 times 3 is 9. So 3 to the second power, or we can also say 3 squared, equals 9. Let's look at 5. All right, 5 has a 4, a little 4. Its power is 4. It's bossy. It says, hey, number 5, write yourself 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then multiply. 5 times 5 is 25. Drop down the others. 25 times 5 is 125. All right, drop down the next one, and all we have left is 125 times 5. You might need to go off to the side and do that one just to be sure. All right, 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12, so we get 625 for that answer. So 5 to the 4th power equals 625. Okay, so that was a quick review of exponents and how they work, because they're going to show up in some of these order of operations problems. So let's look. We have 3 plus 2 minus 2 to the 2nd power. All right, so I'm going to write my PEMDAS up here. PEMDAS. I'm going to use it as a checklist. I'm going to start going through this. Are there any parentheses? Yes, right here. So put my caret under the parentheses. And inside the parentheses, it says 3 plus 2, and that is 5. And drop down everything I haven't used yet. Now I used my parentheses, so they're gone, but I have not used the minus or the 2 to the 2nd power. Next, check for exponents. Are there any exponents? Yes. 2 to the 2nd power, which is 2 times 2, which is 4. Drop down everything I haven't used yet, the minus and the 5. Are there any multiplying and dividing? Nope. Is there adding and subtracting? Yes. 5 minus 4, which is 1. And that's my final answer. Once again, make sure you're using your drop-down work, and you're only doing one little piece at a time. Okay, let's step it up a little bit. Let's look at example number 3. Let's do 2 times 4 plus 3 to the 2nd power. All right, and I'm going to write my PEMDAS above to use as a checklist. All right, first things first. Are there parentheses? Yes. But check this out. Inside of the parentheses, there's 2 things to do, an adding and an exponent. Which one do you think comes first? Well, the exponent comes first because in PEMDAS, it comes before adding. So I'm going to do my exponent first. 3 to the 2nd power is 3 times 3, which is 9. Now I'm not done with my parentheses, so I have to drop the parenthesis, the plus, the 4, the parenthesis, the times, and the 2 down. That all has to come down. All right, do I have any more parentheses to do? Yes. So I still have 4 plus 9, which is 13. I haven't used my times or my 2, so I'm dropping that down. So the last thing I have left to do is my multiplying and dividing. Multiplying 2 times 3 is 26. And that's my answer. There's nothing left to do. So there's my drop-down work. So I think you're getting the hang of this by now. It's paying attention to detail. It's making sure you're following your PEMDAS order. Number 4. I want you to try example 4 on your own. And then I want you to, after I give you the problem, I want you to pause the video, try it on your own, and then hit play to see how you did. Okay, so let's do 10 minus 3 times 2 plus 4. Okay, so I'm going to write my list up here. PEMDAS. Okay, here we go. Do I have any parentheses? No. Do I have any exponents? No. Do I have any multiplying or dividing? I sure do, right here, 3 times 2. So I put my arrow underneath. 3 times 2 is 6. Drop down everything else we haven't done yet. So I had to bring down my plus, my 4, my minus, and my 10. No more multiplying or dividing. Now we're to adding and subtracting. Now remember, adding and subtracting are now married. They love each other. They get along. So whichever one you see first, you do first. And in this case, the first thing we see, since all we have left is adding and subtracting, is actually the subtracting. So we're going to do that first. 10 minus 6 is 4. Drop down what we haven't used, the plus and the 4. And all we have left now is 4 plus 4, which is 8. That's our final answer, 8. Okay, so I think you're ready to try the quick check quiz. So go ahead and get on Schoology and get on the quick check quiz and see how you do.